So it's Thursday in the US, noontime. I don't want to get too political or political at all for any reason, but we're talking about legacy today. And when legacy is so keyed into stimulus talks in the US specifically, as a trader, unfortunately, you have to pay attention to this sort of thing. So if you've been under a rock or not in the US, the Democrats and Republicans have been back and forth on a stimulus. Will they or won't they? Story changes about every 5 minutes. But the bottom line is if they pass a stimulus, it should be bearish for DXY, bullish for BTC, bullish for SPX, bullish for NASDAQ, bullish for stocks. If they don't get it done before the election, November 2nd, and Biden or Trump loses, I think a stimulus will happen after the election regardless. So it should be bullish for crypto again. So the expectation really is the stimulus will happen eventually this year, by the end of the year. So you got to pay attention to the headlines for that because crypto is so correlated with legacy right now. I'll show that in a second. And legacy is correlated to stimulus money, basically. Devaluation of the dollar, that sort of thing. If we look at some correlations here, these are 30-day rolling correlations of DXY, DXY, the US dollar index, and BTC, USD. Blue here is gold versus BTC. This is SPX versus ETH, NASDAQ versus ETH. Together, these mirror each other in that BTC and ETH have similar correlations to all four of these. But just looking at this DXY correlation, it's been negative. It's been ultra negative over the past few months. So anything bearish for DXY should be bullish for BTC. Gold has been fairly positive on a rolling 30-day. On a rolling multi-week correlation, it's nearly 95% correlated. So any stimulus-related legislation should be bullish for gold as well. And the same thing with SPX and NASDAQ. Again, these correlations are so significant and have lasted for quite a long time this year. Just as eyeballing it, it's never lasted a correlation, positive or negative, for ETH versus SPX hasn't ever lasted this long. Same thing with NASDAQ. Everything is being lumped together. You know, we might think we're in our own crypto bubble, DeFi popping off, ETH fees, multi-year generational highs. It's kind of the environment. It's kind of the risk-on environment. It's kind of, there's nothing else better to do with your money. You can't really get a yield anywhere at the moment. Treasuries, etc. So money's looking for a place to be right now, whether it's crypto, whether it's stable coins, whether it's yield farming, whether it's stocks, metals, that sort of thing. One last thing I'll say here is this is the VIX, VIX, volatility index. Historically, spikes in the VIX have been extreme lows for BTC. March was no different from that. So long as BTC continues, or so long as VIX continues to decay, it should be bullish for BTC because that indicates a risk-on environment versus a rising VIX, which indicates a risk-off environment. Right now, BTC is a risk-on vehicle based on how it's correlating with everything else. And ETH is also in that conversation as far as expectations for price based on VIX fluctuations. And just looking at some of these individually, if we look at gold, gold has had a pretty insane run for gold over the past few months. And based on trend metrics, it's still way above the 200 and it's inside the daily cloud. There's kind of two ways in the decision tree that this could go. Right now, it's pausing, it's reconsolidating, it's deciding whether or not it wants to go up or down, is my read on it. It's inside of the cloud. That's a no trade zone for anything in a vacuum. But if this sucker can push above the cloud again with a bullish TK recross above the cloud, there's no doubt in my mind that it's going to make an attempt at 2,500. Just looking at these fibs from the 2011 high to the 2015 low, the 1618 is 2,500. Another alternative is this turns into some sort of cup and handle and you get a deeper retracement with an eventual rebreakout. The issue with multi-year chart patterns is they tend to be not too reliable, but that's certainly something in the back of my mind. If this does break down to 15, 16 for whatever reason, and then breaks out again, this 2,500 target's back on the table. So gold still looks good. It's pretty neutral trend-wise on the daily though. So there isn't like an imminent bullish continuation looming. If you look at silver, silver has had an even more insane run over the past few months. It had this really great, beautiful, gorgeous Wyckofian accumulation, just textbook, stereotypical, even with the spring here to make multi-year lows. I mean, it was just perfect. So it gets its breakout way overbought, right? Look at this volume, look at this RSI. Just pure insanity on the paper markets anyway. So this looks more so than gold that it needs a mean reversion back to the Kijun here on 21. I don't think silver being ready for a mean reversion is necessarily bearish for crypto, but it's definitely worth paying attention to if metals collectively start mean reverting. I think BTC is unlikely to go in the opposite direction just because of the correlations. Doesn't mean it can't. It's just worth keeping an eye on. But all in all, again, silver's still incredibly bullish, especially considering where it's been since, I don't know, 2013. I mean, to see this is just insane. And here's the chart that's really worth, if you got 8 charts that you look at every day, one of them that's worth looking at is Dixie. Have it up in a panel at all times. Because again, if Dixie is super correlated with BTC and Dixie is bearish, you can't be bearish BTC. You just can't. The opposite is true if Dixie is bullish, which it currently isn't super bullish, but if it is, if we do get this mean reversion on Dixie through the cloud back to 95, 96, something like that, BTC is going to have trouble breaking 12, I think, if that's the case, because of the correlations. Now, if we get the stimulus in the US, I expect the Dixie to just sell off hard. If Dixie goes to 88, which is the 2018 low, I mean, we may be looking at 20K BTC at that point. Like it could get that crazy just because of the way BTC is set up right now. Not even hopium. It's just BTC is ready for a multi-year local high breakout, which would flirt with an all-time high at that point. And you're seeing all these companies and treasuries load up on BTC. So there's been an awakening, and a lot of companies have felt that, whether they're crypto adjacent or not. Square kind of being the one we were talking about last week. Great website to watch all this. All of the publicly listed treasuries anyway, bitcointreasuries.org. One treasury that is also worth watching and paying attention to is the Mt. Gox release of coins, which every 6 months is coming in the next 6 months, meaning it just keeps getting delayed and pushed back. Could be Q1 2021 they release the coins. I think it's 150,000 plus, something like that. But that's another supply. It's just supply demand. I mean, if supply is being locked up on WBTC, if it's being locked up in these treasuries for legacy companies, if it's being unlocked from Mt. Gox, that's bearish. It's just real simple. And looking at SPX, also looks like it's ready for a new all-time high if this level can hold at, 3,300? Because it's got a bullish TK recross above the cloud again. Just insanity, right? Like completely divorced from fundamentals of what's going on in the US as far as coronavirus and just day-to-day returning to normal. All this is just stimulus, corporate welfare type stuff that's just paying insanely well for SPX. Devaluation of the dollar plays in here as well. But trend-wise, in a vacuum, this sucker looks ready for 4,300, 4,200, something like that, just based on, again, fibs from the February-March high to low. Call this a cup and handle, call this whatever you want. Trend-wise, it looks great. It is a bit far from the 200, but still looks fine for up. NASDAQ, very similar. It already had its bullish TK recross above the cloud. Pretty insane. It's even farther away from the 200, so there might be some issues there, but crazy, crazy stuff. And then one last chart I just want to highlight is Bed Bath & Beyond. Just comically, we look at crypto charts and people make fun of all sorts of stuff that happens with crypto, but this chart is up 525% from the lows earlier this year. There's no words. I have no words. Clearly a mean reversion. When we talk mean reversion, this is what I'm talking about. The farther this got away from the 200, the more and more it wants to go back. And look at this volume. Look at this div, this volume div. You're getting lower lows on higher volume. And the last dip, I think it was a little lower volume. There's some sort of chart pattern here, descending megaphone or something, bullish 3 drives rather. 1, 2, 3 bounce. Really, there was 5 drives here. I mean, just all sorts of cool technical stuff going on. But wow, 525%. Just as a barometer of what's going on in U.S. legacy markets right now. And for anybody who doesn't know what this stock is, it's a retail, like home goods store in the U.S. So legacy still looks great, oddly enough, even though fundamentally, the United States is kind of falling apart here. Overall, I think stimulus comes regardless of who wins the election, which is bullish for crypto. So pay attention to that. There'll be a few more videos, weekly videos in between then. So we should be able to see that play out slowly over time here.